What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the UI Buzz podcast. I'm your host, as always, Peter Whittam. You can find me and this podcast at peterwhittam.com. In this episode, I'm going to talk about some pros and cons of using pre-built assets. Now, for starters, for those of you who don't know what a pre-built asset is, I'll give you a quick example. There are plenty of places out there where you can buy pre-built assets. They usually come in packs, and they would be things like, for example, you would have, like, say, a temple pack that would have all the things you might expect that you would need to build like a temple level in your game. So like walls and floor, maybe some objects like, burning torches and maybe some old chests, those kind of things, right? I think you get the idea. Or it might be like a science fiction pack of spaceships with different types of spaceships that are pre-built, ready for you to use, with variations and that kind of thing. So that's what I mean by pre-built assets. Now, there are some pros and cons, and I'm going to put forward both sides of the argument here because I know there are differing opinions out there and they are all valid. Now, let's start with the pros, okay? I'm going to give you an example again. As I am learning to build my Endless Hurdles game, 3D version in Unreal Engine, I am spending a lot of time obviously learning how to do things, how to build the game, the business logic, the user interaction, the controls, the animation, all of those kind of things. So what I don't need to be doing is spending my time necessarily at this stage building things like walls and floors and ceilings and things to jump over and all of those kind of things. So that's one win right there. It saves me the hassle of having to learn how to do that if I don't already know. Maybe I don't know how to make 3D models and texture them and all those kind of things. Well, great. This way I don't have to, and I can stay excited about learning how to use my engine of choice to build the game that I want. Along with that, it saves a lot of time because you can just take these pre-built assets, you can incorporate them into the level in your game or however you're going to use them, and just quickly build out something that not only gives you an idea of how to lay out your levels and prototype everything very quickly, but it also looks a lot better if you are maybe not a designer or something like that, right? And it can look very impressive and you can feel good about it. You feel good about showing it to people when you have these professional level quality assets in there. And again, that way it looks great. You don't have to worry about that and you can focus on the core of what you need to get done. So that's a couple of pro examples right there. And they're also very reasonably priced, I think, a lot of the time. If you check out things like Humble Bundle, for example, you keep an eye on that site. They regularly offer massive bundles of quality assets that you can use, be them visual or audio, whatever it may be, at a very good price. And sometimes you're supporting charities too, which is, again, a great thing, right? So that's 3 good reasons to use them right there. Mostly focused around productivity and allowing you to focus on the things you need to learn if you are in an area where you're not familiar with an engine or even how to build a game, things like that, right? So it's a good motivational way to deal with these things. Now, what are the downsides? What are the cons? Well, okay, number one, you may well end up building something that looks like something somebody else has built because you both used the same assets. Yeah, that happened. It's up to you how you feel about that. But you will inevitably probably get people comment and say, oh, this looks just like whatever other game, right? That's a one downside. Now, you can get around that, of course, by editing these assets yourselves to make them different. But, at the core of it, they will look like potentially something somebody else has used. The second one is, yes, you will not learn the skills of how to build those assets necessarily. You could reverse engineer them later on, but it's not the same as learning how to build them. For example, as I said earlier, maybe at some point you need something that's not in that asset pack, or you want to change something that's in there to something you need it to be, and now you've got to learn the skills to go do that. I do think that's beneficial in the long run, but maybe that's not something you need to deal with. However, that can be a downside, right? The learning curve comes later. And then number 3, of course, is potentially there's a cost value involved here. Now, you all know my opinion on this, right? You should invest in the work. You should invest in the things you make and the skills that you gather along the way. Like I've said before about courses on how to make things and all of that kind of stuff, and supporting those content creators out there to help them if they are helping you. So, there's 3 downsides right there. Which side of the equation you fall on is entirely up to you. You've got to figure that out for yourself. My personal thoughts on this is there is nothing wrong with using pre-built assets, because I very quickly want to get to a point where I have something that's working that I can either look at myself or hand off to some other people and get feedback to say, is this something I should pursue as an idea? Am I heading in the right direction? Should I scrap this idea completely, or do I need to change something? And get that feedback a lot quicker than if I had to spend the time figuring out how to build all of the parts that go into my games. So that's some thoughts there. I wanted to put it out there because I've just recently been thinking about this a lot as I have been building, like I say, my Endless Hurdles game. And I thought, let's go with some pre-built assets for the backgrounds. We get the backgrounds that I want that look nice and impressive, and I can focus on refining the game engine itself, and then maybe go back later on, replace those assets with my own ones, something like that. But it very quickly gets me to a prototype and gets me to a place where I know whether I should pursue this or go in a different direction or just abandon it completely. Love to hear your thoughts on this. You can reach out to me. Go to X, right, at UIBuzz, or you can go to peterwhittam.com and reach out to me there. Love to hear your thoughts. If you want to come on and talk about this, hey, by all means, I love having conversations and chatting with people. I've done a lot of interviews on my Compile Swift podcast, and I would love to have some with game developers on here who know an awful lot more about these things than I do, and I think we would all love to learn from you. So there's an open invite for you. That's it, folks. If this has been helpful, you know what to do. Go tell someone about it. You can also buy me a coffee. You can go to peterwhittam.com and buy me a coffee to say thank you for the content and help support the podcast. That's it. See you in the next one.